Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're stepping back into an ancient conversation, one that really challenges how we think about things like status or purpose, maybe even wealth itself. It's going to make you reconsider some pretty fundamental ideas, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And our source here is the Esukārīsuttaṃ. It's this incredible dialogue between the teacher Gautama and a Brahmin, Esukārī.
Right.
And our mission today really is to unpack what they talked about. Because there are some surprising insights there, about what true value is and how human potential goes way beyond societal labels.
Okay, so let's dive in. Where does the conversation start?
Esukārī sets the scene, right?
Yeah.
With the traditional Brahmin view of service or attendance.
Exactly. Purification, he lays out these 4 categories of service, and they're very much tied to the social structure, the class system of the time.
Super rigid, I imagine.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
So according to this view, Brahmins, the priestly class, they could be served by anyone. Other Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, Sudras, everyone served them. They're at the top. Makes sense in that structure. What about the Kshatriyas, the nobles and warriors?
Right. So a Kshatriya could be served by another Kshatriya, or by a Vaisya or a Sudra.
Okay, so a step down, but still defined.
Very defined tiers. And then the Vaisyas, the merchants, the farmers.
Who could they be served by?
Another Vaisya or a Sudra.
And then the Sudras, the laborers, at the bottom.
They could only be served by another Sudra. That was it. Esukārī presents these as fixed rules, unbreakable.
Wow. You can almost feel how heavy that system must have been. But then Gautama comes in. He doesn't just accept this, does he?
Not at all. That's where it gets really interesting. He immediately asks Esukārī, essentially, okay, but does everyone actually agree with this, with these rules?
A direct challenge.
Yep. And Esukārī has to admit, well, no. No, they don't.
So right there, a crack appears in this supposedly solid structure.
Exactly. And Gautama doesn't stop there. He uses this really powerful analogy. It's almost unsettling. He asks Esukārī to picture forcing someone poor and helpless, to eat poison.
Poison?
Yeah, poison. And then making them pay for it.
Oof. That's intense. What's the point he's making?
He's showing what service isn't. It's not something harmful, something forced onto someone against their well-being. It's the opposite of a benefit. It's a burden.
Okay, I get it. So that image sets up his own definition.
Precisely. Gautama then lays out his principle. He says, look, I'm not saying serve everyone, and I'm not saying serve no one.
So what's the decider?
The outcome. The only thing that matters is whether the service leads to betterment, that's seyo for the person being served.
Betterment. Yeah.
And crucially, that it doesn't lead to degradation, to making things worse, papillo.
So the first big takeaway for you listening is this. Real service, according to Gautama, isn't about your social box. It's about the impact. Does it help? Does it uplift? Or does it harm?
Absolutely. It's purely about the ethical result. And he makes it clear this applies across the board.
To all the classes.
Yes. Kshatriyas, Brahmins, Vaishyas, Sudras, doesn't matter who you are or who you're serving. The only question is, does this action lead to betterment or degradation? That's what determines its worth.
That completely reframes it. Okay, so Esukārī's initial idea about service is challenged. Does he shift gears then?
He does. He moves on to talk about wealth, or possessions, dana. And again, he presents the traditional Brahmin view, where wealth is also, you guessed it, tied to your social class.
Okay, let's hear it. What's wealth for a Brahmin in this system?
For Brahmins, their specific treasure was alms begging. That was their designated form of wealth.
Interesting. And for the Kshatriyas, the warriors?
Their wealth was symbolized by the bow and quiver, archery, their martial skill.
They're tools, essentially. Makes sense. Vaishyas, merchants and farmers.
Theirs was farming and cattle keeping, agriculture and animal husbandry. That was their domain of wealth.
Right. And the Sudras, the laborers.
Manual labor. Things like, carrying loads using a carrying pole. That physical work was their defined form of wealth. And Esukārī emphasizes, if you neglect this assigned wealth, you're basically setting yourself up for failure.
It's just so prescribed. Your job, your value, your wealth, all dictated by birth.
Exactly. But Gautama, predictably now perhaps, challenges this too. He asks the same kind of question. Does everyone actually agree with these definitions of wealth?
And Esukārī says,
again, he has to admit, no, not everyone agrees.
Another crack. So what's Gautama's alternative view of wealth?
This is really profound. He introduces the idea of the noble transcendent Dhamma, the teaching, the path itself as the true wealth for any person.
Ah, so shifting from external markers to something internal, something spiritual.
Precisely. It's not about what you have in a material sense or what job society assigns you. True wealth is this inner cultivation, this understanding.
How does he illustrate that? Did he use another analogy?
He did. A brilliant one, actually. Fire.
Fire.
Yeah. He says, look, we name a fire based on what it burns, right? A wood fire, a grass fire, a fire made from cow dung.
Yeah, makes sense.
In the same way, he argues, a person isn't ultimately defined by the family they happen to be born into, Kshatriya family, Brahmin family, whatever. They're defined by their actions, by their character.
So the family is just like the fuel source. It tells you where the fire started, but not the nature of the fire itself.
Exactly that. The birth family just shows where that self originated. But the person's true identity comes from what they do, the qualities they embody.
That's a really powerful way to reframe identity away from lineage.
It really is. And building on that, Gautama just flat out rejects the idea that high birth or having a good complexion or even being materially wealthy makes someone inherently superior or inferior.
And why? Was his reasoning there?
It's crucial. He points out that someone from any background, even the highest status one, can still do bad things. They can engage in what he calls the 10 unwholesome actions.
Could you remind us what those are?
Sure, it's a standard list. Killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying, divisive speech, harsh speech, idle chatter, covetousness or greed, ill will or hatred, and holding wrong views, like denying cause and effect.
Right, so anyone, regardless of status, can fall into those.
Anyone. And conversely, someone from any background, low or high, can choose not to do those things. They can abstain from unwholesome actions and actively cultivate right view.
So the potential for good or bad actions is universal.
Absolutely universal. And that, Gautama says, is the real measure of a person's worth. Do their actions lead to an increase in positive qualities? He lists faith, virtue, learning, generosity, and wisdom.
So that's the standard. Not birth, not looks, not money, but whether you're growing in these positive qualities.
That's the ultimate criterion, and that determines who is truly worthy of respect, who you should, attend to or learn from.
It just completely turns that social pyramid upside down. It's all about internal cultivation, not inherited status.
And the capacity for that cultivation, he stresses, is universal. It's not limited to any one group.
Does he give examples to drive this home with Esukārī?
He does, with some very direct, almost simple questions. Yeah. He asks Esukārī, look, can only a Brahmin cultivate boundless loving-kindness, metta-citta?
And what does Esukārī say?
He has to admit, no, of course not. All 4 classes, Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vesa, Sudra, all of them can cultivate that boundless compassion.
Okay, so a core spiritual practice isn't class-bound.
Not at all. Then Gautama uses an even more mundane example. He asks, can only a Brahmin take, a towel and soap down to the river and wash off dirt?
Huh. Okay, that's pretty basic.
Right. And Esukārī again says, well, no, obviously anyone from any of the 4 classes can do that.
It seems so obvious, but the implication is huge, isn't it?
It really is. Whether it's a profound spiritual capacity like loving kindness or something as simple as physical hygiene, these fundamental human abilities belong to everyone. They completely transcend these artificial social divisions.
So building on that universality, does he have a final point, a final analogy?
Yes, and it's perhaps the most powerful one, bringing back the fire theme to really clinch the argument.
Okay, I'm ready.
He asks Esukārī to imagine a scenario. A king gathers people together, and he gets representatives from all levels of society. Highborn Kshatriyas and Brahmins, yes, but also people from families considered low. He mentions Kshatralas and Pukusas specifically.
So the whole spectrum of society is there.
The whole spectrum, and they're all tasked with making fire.
Okay.
But, and here's the link to status, again, they're given different types of wood. The highborn get, fancy wood teak, sandalwood, precious stuff.
And the lowborn?
They get common wood, stuff like castor wood, or even wood from pig feeding troughs. Really basic fuel.
Right, emphasizing the difference in their social standing through the material.
Exactly. Then comes the killer question. Gautama asks Esukārī, okay, think about the fire that's produced. Would the fire made by the highborn with the fancy wood be any brighter, any more colorful, more radiant? Would it be more useful for doing what fire does than the fire made by the lowborn with the common wood?
Ah, I see where this is going. What does Esukārī say? This feels like the final test.
It really does, and his answer is unequivocal. He says no.
No difference.
No difference at all. All fire, Gautama implies, and Esukārī accepts, regardless of the source of the fuel or the social standing of the person who lit it, is fundamentally the same. It's equally bright, equally radiant, equally capable of doing its job providing light, heat, cooking food.
Wow. That just levels everything.
Completely. And Gautama connects it right back. He says, just like that fire, anyone from a Kshatriya family, a Brahmin family, a Vesa family, a Sudha family, anyone at all who chooses to leave the household life, go forth into homelessness and practice the path, the Dhamma Vinaya that he teaches.
Meaning abstaining from those unwholesome actions, cultivating right view.
Exactly. Anyone who does that will achieve what is skillful, what is just, what is right. Their birth, their background, their former status, it means absolutely nothing in terms of their potential for spiritual attainment and realizing the truth.
So, after this incredibly systematic, logical, and frankly compassionate dismantling of his entire inherited worldview, how does Esukārī react in the end?
He's deeply impressed. You get the sense he's genuinely seen the truth in Gautama's words. He declares himself a lay follower, taking refuge in Gautama, the Dhamma, and the Sangha for the rest of his life.
A complete conversion, essentially,
Oh.
based on the power of this reasoning.
It seems so. It's a powerful testament to how this wisdom could cut through deeply ingrained social conditioning, even back then.
What an incredible journey through this sutta. This deep dive really does peel back those layers of societal expectation, doesn't it? It reveals this ancient perspective on human potential that just feels, well, still pretty radical today.
It really does. I mean, the core message seems so clear. Your real worth. It's not about the family you were born into or the job society expects you to do or how much money you have.
No.
It's about the quality of your actions, your ethics, the wisdom you cultivate inside yourself. And crucially, these are capacities available to everyone, universally.
So wrapping this up, what's the final thought for you listening? In a world that, let's be honest, is still often very focused on those external things, background looks, bank balance, this ancient conversation poses a really potent question, doesn't it? If fire from any wood burns just as bright, if anyone can achieve what's skillful and just, well, what fire are you actually cultivating within yourself? Is that where your true value really lies?